Maganda at madami yung usapin, madami tayong pag-uusapan sa umagang ito. Maraming pangyayari sa Pilipinas na kung saan ay kailangan magiging involved at mag-engage tayo bilang isang simbahan. And therefore, naisip ko na pag-aralan natin ngayon, in fact, this is still related to our studies on the Baptist distinctives, and that is the separation of church and state. Separation of church and state. So just a review. So this is a review for the acronym that we use for Baptist distinctives. This is not a Reformed Baptist distinctive. This is uniquely for Baptists. So wala silang magawa, wala silang maisip, ginamit nila yung Baptist, but this is not exclusively a Baptist distinctive. Kasi yung Reformed Baptist, very distinct yun. Yun ang Reformed Baptist. This one is like very broad na coverage ng distinctives. So this is common. We have biblical authority, autonomy of the local church, priesthood of all believer, 2 ordinances, baptism and Lord's Supper, individual soul liberty, saved, baptized church membership, 2 offices, the pastors and the deacons, and separation of the church and state. As you will notice, most of we already discussed, and the underlined distinctives are actually not distinctives because all Christians and evangelicals believe this in terms of biblical authority and priesthood of all believers. But we will discuss that separately when we talk about biblical authority, Bible or biblicism or biblical theology, and then we could also discuss the priesthood of all believers, but this is more in terms of hermeneutics. So how we are, as believers, understand the Bible on our own. We don't need somebody to guide us. But for now, we'll be studying the separation of the church and state. Now, we have to understand the background. So on the Old Testament background, we find that the church and the state is one. We call it theocracy. So Yahweh is the one that is governing, leading, and He is the one giving instructions to Israel. And eventually we find that in the Old Testament we have King Saul, King David, and the people like to have more of a physical leadership, similar to the other countries or to the other nations. So God gave them a monarchy. And this is what we have at the very beginning from King Saul up to the exile of Israel in Babylon. Now, why is this a Baptist distinctive? So we would like to look at the historical background. The medieval ages, so the church controls the state. In fact, the whole of the Roman Catholic Europe is under the Pope. So during this time, in the medieval ages up to the 15th century, it is the Pope that is actually the emperor of all Roman Catholic countries. It changed during the time of the Reformation, wherein in the Protestant Europe and in British America, there is a separation from the Pope, but then a lot of the practices is still being sanctioned on the religions and denominations. In fact, our friend here is from the Anglican Church, and the Anglican Church has their own, quote-unquote, the Bishop of England, or the Pope of England, which was during the time of the Reformation, was Henry VIII. So up to this time, the defender of the faith is the King of England. And basically that happened in all of Europe, in all of the Reformation. They continue to have like a state and a church joined together as one. it was the Baptists who is being the minority, and we are the latecomer, that we have been subjected to persecution by the state, because the state are being sanctioned by other denominations other than the Baptists. So basically, in the next week, probably I will repeat again, so I will review again the roots of the Baptists, what are the original understanding of Christendom, of evangelicals, of Protestants, of other Christians, and eventually why we have these Baptist distinctives that we have studied. And the idea of separation of church and state becomes global. It became like a practice for everybody. And so even in England, where they still have the monarchy, the king as the head of the church, basically it's a titular head. And also even in those who recognizes the church, it is also like more honorary. Even in the Philippines, you can call the Philippines as a Catholic church, a Roman Catholic church, Roman Catholic state, but the Roman Catholic Church does not like control or have a union between the church and the state, unlike before during the times of the Pope. So the doctrine of the church and state, or the separation of the church and state, was instituted in the United States Constitution. During the outset, at the very beginning, when the Constitution of the U.S. was being promulgated by the fathers of the United States, they actually thought of adopting a denomination. And it was the Baptist denomination that was asked to become the state church. So the Baptists were the ones persecuted in Europe. That's why they have to leave Europe and go to the US. And now they became so many, a lot of the Baptists. And the doctrine of the Baptist is acceptable in terms of the government institution, that the Baptists were actually invited to promulgate or to form an article showing that the Baptist is now the new denomination, or the church, or the state religion. Of course, the Baptists declined and did not accept that. So the first U.S. Constitution, there is no mention about religion. But definitely religion comes into the fore, because there are so many religion and there are so many issues with regards to religious exercises that they have to have the First Amendment. And the First Amendment concerns religion. And so the religion that they have, the amendment says that the Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. As I said, the U.S. invited the Baptists to become the state religion. They said no. So therefore, there is no more establishment of such kind of state religion, and no prohibition of any other religion. And basically, the result is that the taxes will not go into the promulgation of one religion. So missions cannot be supported by the state. That is basically what it means. It means that if you build churches, the government will not build churches for you. You build it on yourself. But as a privilege, you will not be asked to pay taxes for the salary of your ministers. You will not pay income taxes for the places that they live. Parsonages, there is also no taxes. So those are things that are given in terms of free religion or free practice. So the point here is not that the United States does not recognize religion or does not want religion. So that's the idea right now, that because the U.S. says that there should not be a state religion, that the wrong impression is that there should be no religion, that the U.S. should be an atheist country. So, but that is not the point. The point actually was that there should be a continuing religion, but not sponsored by the government. So the doctrine from the U.S. was brought in the Philippine Constitution, not as an amendment, but as part of the articles of the Philippine Constitution, as the Declaration of Principles in State Policies. So the Section 6 in Article 2 is the separation of church and state shall be inviolable, which means that the church institutions will be exempt from taxation, and that no public money or property shall be appropriated or applied or paid, okay, for church, sect. Okay, yeah, so that's it. So that is specifically what is being stated in the separation of church and state. Again, the separation of church and state does not mean that the Philippine government does not believe in God, does not believe in religion. Okay, it's not. It's just that you cannot spend money to build churches for, say, even for a Roman Catholic church. So, the Baptist historical understanding of the doctrine. So, for us to understand in terms of the Reformed Baptists, we go to the London Baptist Confession of Faith. The understanding is government is given by God for public good. That is in chapter 24 on the civilian government. So God, the Supreme Lord and King of the whole world, was ordained civil authorities to be under Him and over the people for His own glory and the public good. For this purpose, He has armed them with the power of the sword to defend and encourage those who do good and to punish evildoers. So if you look at this, you will basically see this in Romans chapter 13, wherein the citizens are to be subject and to pay taxes and to pay respect to civil authorities. In Romans chapter 13, verse 1, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. For He is the servant of God, an avenger who comes out God's wrath in the wrongdoer. Pay to all who has owed to them, taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. So here we see the basic premise in Romans chapter 13 that the Christian should follow the authorities. And the context, of course, you understand that during this time, they are following the Roman authorities. And the emperors are not good people, but they are good governance. They have good governance. They provide basic services. They provide public good and public service. So even as you can see in the life of the Apostle Paul, he can appeal to Caesar. And the rule of law is being followed. So even during the time of the Apostle Paul, he can appeal of himself being a Roman, that they cannot touch him because he is a Roman. So those are things that you will notice that the rule of law is being followed even in spite of the corruption in the Roman government. So, the honest public service. So, this is what we recognize in the chapter 24 of the London Baptist Confession, civil government. Christians may lawfully, okay, so there is like may, and can, will, lawfully and carry out the duties of public office when called to do so. In performing their office, they must especially maintain justice and peace according to the wholesome laws of each kingdom or other political entity. To carry out those duties, they are authorized now under the New Testament to wage war in just and necessary situations. So when you look at the Reformed Baptists, the Christians are actually allowed to run for office. Okay, so that is one thing that probably unique, because there are churches, and I myself would discourage people to run in government, because the word government means for the Philippines corrupt. So either you enter into a corrupt system, don't think yourself not to be corrupted. So, but then the theory is that there is an honest public service, and therefore Christians may lawfully serve in government. The thing about the principle, and I have to explain this, because you have to understand that in many times and in many occasions, Christians revolted. There were revolutions, and the Christians got involved in this. One of the most obvious one is during the time of King Charles I. So he was the one who replaced, I forgot, Elizabeth, after Elizabeth. So there was like unjust practices were in religion, and basically so there is the king is trying to pursue things that are in violation of conscience, of scripture, and eventually the parliament, they call themselves the parliament, but most of them are Puritans, and they wage war against Charles I, and they cut the head of Charles I. So to wage war in just and necessary situations becomes like justification for that. In Luke chapter 3, verse 12, tax collectors also come to be baptized and said to John the Baptizer, "Teacher, what shall we do?" And he said to them, "Collect no more than you are authorized to do." So this is a proof that you can be a civil servant. So you can be a collector, you can join the BIR, but you only collect only what is being authorized. Soldiers also are asked, "What shall we do?" And he said to them, "Do not extort money from anyone by threats or by false accusation. Be content with your wages." So this means that we can be a public servant. Now, the important thing about government and about our relationship is that we always pray for our government, for our state leaders. This is found in Romans chapter 13, and this is premised also in the London Baptist Confession. Section 3, we ought to make requests and prayers for kings and everyone in authority, so that under their rule we may live a quiet and peaceful life in all godliness and honesty. So this is basically what we find in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1. Okay, reading together, begin. First of all, then, I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. This is good, and it is pleasing in the sight of God our Savior, who desires all people to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. Okay, so we are now going into more practical side of our study. What is the Christian duty under a corrupt government? These are things that I posted already in Facebook. If you have read my Facebook, then you should be able to see this. This is ChatGPT. Why I use ChatGPT? Because the government hides the data. You cannot find it simply by looking at the DBM, looking at the DPWH, looking at their website. They are the worst websites. They were designed for you not to be informed. Okay, so I prepare websites, we have websites, and we have always websites that are easy to use. So the websites that the Philippine government has, make sure that you don't understand anything. So I asked ChatGPT to do this. So as you can see, by 1990, we have around like 1 trillion peso, or about a trillion peso by 1990. And as of this time, we have 16 trillion debt, and that was in 2025. In June of 2025, we already have 17.27 trillion. Okay, and there is an increase of 11% per year. As you can see, the budget that we are getting, the one that we are preparing, corresponds actually to what we expect to get as a tax, or usually lower than that. But you can just imagine that we earn like only 6 trillion, and our debt is like 17 trillion. So that is the state of the nation right now. These are not being spoken. The president will not speak about it. Anybody, they don't talk about this. These are open secrets. And what does it mean? It means that the argument is that we are still okay. They say that, it's not something that we should worry. There's nothing to worry. But when you look at when you type in the Google and you ask, what are the risks involved having this kind of figures, having this earning, and then you have this debt? What are the risks? The number one risk is that you will not be able to pay. You will not be able to pay the principal. You will not even be able to pay the interest. Okay, so that becomes the problem in government. Now, we have to understand, that's why we need to, as Christians, get involved whatever is happening right now in the Philippines. September 21, they have these rallies, and we are, that is the earth, we are in heaven. Who cares about the earth? I care only heaven. This is what they do. So you have the pie, it's 100. You will notice that there is an unprogrammed funds. That is an illegal fund. But they they hide it actually in their pie. You cannot find it in the government pie. That's hidden. We're showing it here. You will notice the infrastructure. It's how much? How many percent? 14. Education, how many percent? Why is education higher than infrastructure? Why do they have to put always the budget on education higher than the other things? Every other things. Because that is the Constitution. The Constitution says that the bulk of the budget against any others, education should always be higher. Okay, so we have 1% higher, okay, justifiable, it's true. But you know what is that program funds? It's in the infrastructure. Which means that 14 plus 12, that's 26, against the Constitution that says education should have a higher percentage, 15 versus 26. Okay? And what is the problem with this? What is the problem with the unprogrammed funds? The unprogrammed funds, okay, are funds Because there is no such thing as a program funds. Everything is programmed. But what they do is they take the money or the funds from different sectors and would say, let's transfer it, and we call it unprogrammed. And what do you know? What you know about what is being taken out? These are ADB debts, World Bank debts, IFC debt. I am a worker. I am a consultant for World Bank, ADB, IFC. So what we do, the government will come to the World Bank and they tell them, oh, we have a project. These are, because you go them only for mega projects. You cannot loan to ADB because you want $1 million. ADB will not bother that. At least you have to loan $1 billion. At least. And probably they will be happy if you have like $100 billion. 100 trillion will be better. And what do they do? Okay, so we have a project. This is a mega project. We will get a loan of 100 billion. And the ADB World Bank FC will be happy. Okay, we'll give you the money. But then instead of putting it to the mega projects, they're now putting it in where? Okay? They're supposed to build a bridge in Iloilo, in my province. In Iloilo, Guimaras. I don't know if you read the news. That is already a program project. And it has already the loan from Korea. Okay? So what happens? When they receive the money, what do? They stop the project, put it on the unprogrammed. Put it on the unprogrammed. So, okay. That's why the president of Seoul, stopped the loan. He stopped the loan. And he said that this will only be part of the corruption. It will go to the pocket of the government. And the Philippine government, of course, what did they do? They denied that they applied for a loan. They denied to apply for a loan, but it was in the zone of the president that they are putting a mega project in the Philippines, in my province, and they have already completed the feasibility studies, all the designs, all the tests, meaning they are already on the process of implementing the project. They have already the contractor. Okay, so what are we seeing? Okay, so everything is planned, but then the problem is you get the money, and instead of putting to the project, they will put it on the program, and they will pocket the money. And you would wonder why, during the time of the polls, people are appalled because they're talking about a maximum. They're speaking about millions and millions of pesos, and the total is around 5 billion. And everybody's about to and then now we are talking about trillions. Trillions. That's why I have to put in my post the number. How many number of zeros is a trillion? How many lifetimes do you live to get a trillion? A billion. Even a million. Do you earn a million for a year? To earn a billion, that will be 1,000 years. In your lifetime. The whole lifetime that you have, probably it's good for you to have like 20 million by the time you die. They're talking about trillions. Okay, so the problem right now in this picture is, look at the pie. Look at the defense. China is attacking us and we have only 7% in our defense. And look at the debt servicing. The debt, we're paying the debt. How many percent is that? Can you see that?
28.
28%. 28%. Okay? And 18% of that are just interests. We're not even reducing the principal. Okay? Only 10% is being paid in the principal. How do they do the corruption? This is the DPWH data from 2023 to 2026. Say, for example, the president will give them what they call the National Expenditure Program. So all the LGUs, all the agencies in the Philippines will submit to the president. Sir, this is the urgent projects that we need in our municipality, in our city, in our province. So this will be all gathered together, usually by the Regional Development Board, by the Regional Development Council, RDC. And this will be submitted to the president, and they will have the priority. And the president will say, for example, identify in 2023, 700 billion. And it will be submitted to legislation. You know, the principle of Constitution in the Philippines, the legislation is the, what do you call, the Congress is the handler of the purse. The purse. It is the legislation that approves the purse. Who gets what? So this is what they do. What happens? Normally, constitutionally, they can only work around the 700. So when the president says, okay, I have a budget of 700, they can like go around, put it here, this is not priority, or there is something wrong. So they can go around the numbers, but they cannot exceed 700. What happened is, for example, 2023, they have 894. So this is when you listen, always they are talking. When you talk about Ping Lacson, about Tito Soto, about everybody is talking about insertions. Because somebody inserted this, somebody inserted that, the small committees inserted this, the Deacons inserted this. What do you mean by insertions? Insertions are not included in the identified projects. And basically, they are what we call ghost projects. Ghost projects. They're basically going straight to the pocket of the politicians. And from that alone, from that insertion alone, how much is that in 2023? 180 billion already. And we're only talking about the DPWH, and we are only talking about the insertions. Okay, so those are examples I'm showing you. And then the one that is there, like the 718 billion, according to the Senate inquiry, which has already been published by the University of the Philippines a long time ago, that 70%, only about 20 to 30% of the cost of the project goes to the project. 70-80% goes to the pocket. If it's a ghost project, 100% goes to the pocket. The discussion is the project standing or horizontal? If the project is standing, okay, so you cannot get more than 30% because it will collapse. Okay, so you can cut this by 30%, so what you do? You increase the price. A nail that will cost, say for example, 1 peso will become 10 pesos. Okay? Those are simple mathematics that they will do. Because they bloat the project so that when they cut, they will still able to put up an infrastructure that is standing. But when they say it's horizontal, like flood controls, canals, drainage, roads, you can do whatever you want. You can produce a ghost project out of it because it will not topple. That's why 70% of all of the budget, specifically for DPWH, is pocketed. No wonder that, can you imagine, Congressman Ko has a 5 billion worth of airplanes. And the Philippine Coast Guard complained. Philippine Coast Guard, they don't have that kind of assets. The Philippines does not have an asset that is being used by a congressman. So, what is the Christian duty? Number one, prayer and witness. So we have to pray for the rulers, and also we have to leave examples of being honest. We refuse bribery, and we refuse theft. The best example is we have to tell our relatives not to accept the 1,000 peso, 500 peso, 800 peso during the election. Okay? Get the 1,000, they will get 1 billion. We get 1,000, they get the billion. We need to have the confrontation. Prophetic confrontation means like John the Baptist confronting Herod. The church must denounce corruption with courage. Okay, you see the picture. He died. All the Reformed Baptists, the strong Reformed Baptist pastors are dying. That's Bodhi Bokam. Bodhi Bokam is a friend of Tim. He's not here. I listen to him always. He's a very good Reformed Baptist teacher. But he said that in politics, I will speak my conviction. In economy, I will speak my conviction. Because he was confronted by a pastor. Why are you talking about politics? Why are you talking about economics? We should be talking about spiritual things. And Bokam said, no. We are here for a purpose. We are here at this very time, at these very issues for a purpose. And what is the point of our participation? We have to put Christ preeminence in everything. Colossians chapter 1 verse 18. In everything, even in politics, even in government. We will not allow corruption happening just because we are Christians. Of course, I will not preach this in a message, probably mentioned, but not this. But then in terms of the Sunday school, I can tell you this. In Grace Baptist Church in Los Baños under Pastor Noel Espinosa, they have their Sunday school on the wealth of nations. They're talking about economics. They talk about a lot of technical things. Because they know that the Christians have to equip technically of these kinds of information and knowledge. We have to resist both political withdrawal, that means wala tayong pakialam, okay? We don't care about earth, we are bound in heaven. But at the same time, and most importantly, political idolatry. If you look at my page, I always call culto. Culto. When you take a leader, say for example, someone, you idol the person, and anyone that attacks that person, you become his attack dog. You will always protect that person. That's idolatry. That's political idolatry. He is killing people, it's okay. Okay? He asks people to kill, it's okay. He speaks foul languages, it's okay. There is nothing okay. And now what happens to our country? You know, before 2016, cursing, swearing is unparliamentary. Unparliamentary. You should not hear that in Congress. Now, it's a regular stuff. Everybody is cursing everybody. Go to online. Everybody is cursing everybody. Because of our ideology. We fight for corruption, not for personalities. Just because I attack someone, they will tell me, oh, because you are a Marcos loyalist. And they never know me. Kuya, Marcos loyalist ka na pala. And I have to tell them, in that case, what am I doing in February 22 between the tanks of the Marcos, okay, and the camp that I protect inside Camp Aguinaldo? I was sleeping there at the most critical time when Marcos could have just bombed and wiped out Camp Aguinaldo. I was there at the gate. I was sleeping at the gate. At 25, when I first heard that Marcos left already, I climbed the walls of Malacanang, okay, to enjoy the democracy that we have in February 25, 1986. Don't tell me that I am a Marcos loyalist. Just because I attack everybody else, I also attack Marcos. I am not happy. I am not happy with what he's doing. It is the corruption in government that we should be able to identify and to denounce. Denounce. We cannot be happy with what is happening right now. I tell you, in a year or two, okay, frankly, the lady in waiting, if he sits in 2025, 28, there will be no more Philippines. There will be no more Philippines, I tell you. I am sorry to say that. The way that the money, there is no more money, we are under all this debt. How can you run a government when you can no longer pay your government employees? It will come to that point. That happened in Venezuela. They have to delay payment, and once you delay payment to your government employees, hellbound. And what happens? When you start saying, I cannot pay my debt, what happens? Your peso becomes Japanese money. Your peso becomes Vietnamese dong. Your peso becomes, 1 peso is equivalent to 20,000 dong. That will happen. That happened already in France, in Germany. And who rose to the occasion? Hitler, Napoleon Bonaparte. Those are people who became strong men because government democracy failed. So, the government is a covenant with the governed. The principle of state or social contract. You can always hear this in philosophy, in theory of government. Thomas Hobbes will talk about social contract. Social contract is you become our leaders, okay, to protect us. But once you are no longer protecting us and you are only making yourself happy, then the contract is removed. In Autonomy chapter 17, the king is chosen by God from the people to keep God's laws. In 2 Samuel 5:3, in his covenant with David, Okay, he made a covenant with David. Israel made a covenant with David before he was king. And that is to serve their king. In 2 Kings 11:17, Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people that they should be the Lord's people. So there is a contract, a covenant. And the government's covenant, as in Romans chapter 13, is to impose peace and order, justice, okay, and payment for those who are evil. And that is the problem right now in the Philippines. As Kiko Pangilinan said, nobody is put into jail. And even if you put people into jail, the next president will bring them out of jail. Give a pardon for them. So, just residential pardon is the key. So that is the nature of the problem that we have. So, government, God covenants with His people, rulers covenant with the governed. Authority is delegated, not inherent. That is the point of the monarchy. Not because you're a king, you can do anything you want. I won my 100,000, I won my 50,000 when I joined Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The question of, what's the handsome guy?
Pedro.
No, Boyet De Leon. The question is, okay, who is the king who signed the Magna Carta? And in what year? Okay, so that's the question. The point there is not because he is King John, he can do whatever he wants. The people has the right. And do you know what? Britain does not have a constitution. Britain does not have like our constitution or the US Constitution. They rely on their old documents. And one of the documents is the Magna Carta, signed by King John. So those are things that we have to understand, that while the power is there, it has been given by the people. And the people is allowed to take it when it is no longer usable for them. Rulers are bound by covenant to govern justly under God's law. So people are bound by covenant to obey lawful rule unless rulers break covenant through tyranny, idolatry, or injustice. These issues we discussed in 1986. Okay? The one that we're discussing right now is an issue that was brought up to us in 1986. It's an election between Marcos and Cory Aquino. And most of the fundamental Baptists just joined Marcos. They don't want a woman, because the Bible says no woman president should be president in the Philippines. Basically that. Corruption, no problem. The issue that was brought to us then was, are we going to participate in rallies? Okay, that was the big issue, and it divided churches, it divided friends. And the funny thing is, for example, our church in February 1986, it was the pastor who brought us to EDSA. Okay, so the pastor led his flock after the service. They went to EDSA to make the rally. Pastor Brian Ellis, a British, okay, said that I will not allow anybody to go to the rally. But everybody else went to the rally anyway. so you see, there are two differing opinions on what to do during those times. But the point is that these things you have to decide individually. And you have to be aware of the biblical basis for whatever you're going to do. And what is the biblical basis of the demands that we can have for the government. So this is a reminder for us. Because sometimes for example, myself, I'm old. Okay? You will notice I'm old. I'm putting this beard in because sometimes people forget I'm old. And I want people like my apostles to have a better Philippines. The church mission is preaching the gospel and not political activism. That's number one. So meaning if I ever posted this week, it's because September 21, there was a rally, and then suddenly when I saw in the Senate, it's business as usual for Marcoleta. It was business as usual. Everybody was trying to investigate, and he is here trying to obstruct the investigation. You can see that. You watch he was always interrupt. What is the purpose of interrupting when there is investigation to know exactly what is happening? Interrupt, and talk and waste your time. Warning against political idolatry. And so my friends that are idols of somebody, their culto, will attack me. Why you attacking Marcoleta? He is our hero, he is our idol, he is untouchable, he is clean. That's political idolatry. The word that they use in the US, because this is common now in the US. Their God is Trump. And the other side, their God probably is Biden or somebody else, or whoever took the mantle. So they have their two gods, the gods of the liberals, the gods of the conservatives. But we do not have that God. I do not have God, Marcos, Duterte, Aquino. Those are not my gods. My God is the Bible. My God is against corruption. Because my God is God who said that He wants preeminence in the universe. Jesus wants to have preeminence. And what means Jesus is King of the world? What does it mean? It means that righteousness reigns, no corruption, peace and order, everybody happy. That is what Jesus wants. And anybody who adheres to corruption is against Jesus. Anyway, so political idolatry. 125 million lang yung ninakaw compared to billions and trillions they're talking about. Everybody's magnanakaw. When they're all thieves. Don't tell me this is a lesser thieves and a greater thieves. Both of them are thieves. Saying the Great Commission, not cultural dominion, is the church task. So again, the statism is also like political ignorance, ignoring everything that is happening in the Philippines. The essence of our language is always direct. We direct, even in spite of the problems in government, we direct our message to the gospel. That it is the gospel, it is the God that saves, not government. Not your idol that will save. It is God and His gospel. Therefore, what is the hope beyond the corruption that is happening in the Philippines? Corrupt governments are temporary. I believe that. I believe that. And even when I read my blog, people will always say, I believe in the future of my children. I believe the hope is our children. They will know what to do. Daniel 2:21 says, God removes kings and set up kings. He is the one that decides, not them. Regardless of whatever they want, if God will take them, today they will not wake up. They will be dead. And that is, I'm happy always to speak of that as the great equalizer. Great equalizer. However bad and evil you will be, mamamatay ka rin. Sabi nga ni Katrina, sana Lord, kunin mo na sila lahat. Take them all away. The problem is there is no more government in the Philippines in that case. Psalm 2:10-12, kings are warned to serve the Lord with fear or face judgment. That's what the great judgment is. What is that? That is the day of judgment. Yeah, they can have their billions, they can have their trillions, but when they die, they will be naked. Naked. Not a single centavo they will bring. And they will be frank with the God of God, with the King of Kings, the judge of this world. Our hope is not reforming government, but in Christ's eternal kingdom. The words of Abraham, we did not see the city of God here. The kingdom of God is not here, but hereafter. Thereafter is the eternal kingdom. And there is where righteousness, justice, and peace reigns. Okay. Oh, we still have 5 minutes, 10 minutes to discuss. Okay, questions? Ma'am Nems,
Oh yeah.
dami mong comments sa, you're the most active eh.
Ano, sa Constitution yung question mo ba? If ever you have, you can share your wisdom on this. Because in Article chapter 2 verse, chapter 2 verse 6, the separation
Separation of church and state.
So, it's normal thing that we see every election time that these politicians go to this particular church denomination, so-called. We know it for a fact. So, because it's explicitly stated in the Constitution that there is a separation between the state and religion. So what should be the implication of that? I mean to say, what should the government do with this kind of, violation of the law?
None.
Diba?
That's not part of the Constitution. So the Constitution is only like promoting a religion. So for example, okay, Duterte won. And then he said, okay, everybody, I want to become members of Kibuloy's Kingdom of God. Okay, and everyone that does not become a member of Kibuloy's will be given a hefty fine of 10,000 pesos. So those are violations. So, but if they say, okay, you vote for this, you vote for that, the Constitution does not say anything about that. But as Reformed Baptists, we don't do that. That's against our principle of the separation of church and state. So for us, our understanding of separation of church and state goes together with the liberty of conscience. So the church is not here to tell you what to do, who to vote. Okay? We are clear with what we call liberty of conscience.
Yung sa naman, yung sa Iglesia ni Cristo, they have one vote.
Yun nga.
Kasi niyan, sa doctrine nila, nakalagay, pinaniniwala na based on the Bible, ay mayroon silang one mind, there is one mind, there is one decision. So, parang paniniwala nila, and God is the one who appoints the government, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, meron silang part na iboto, yung isang boto lang sila para iboto yun. Kaya anong nangyari? What is the implication? Protection of the church yun. Nasa kanila, sa INC, protection nila yun, then parang favor yan. So the politician will always approach the INC, then INC gets the
Position.
So they have their own TV, they have their own land, like this. Protection from the government, policemen, soldiers, parang gano'n.
And
You-
then their members will be given also this higher position.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So
I-
that's
you-
part of the negotiation. Say for example, the usual negotiation is the LTO. So LTO will always be run by Iglesia ni Cristo down the line.
Kasi
From top
kinukontrol
to
nila yung
bottom.
Catholic.
No.
Yung Catholic kasi ganoon din ginagawa. Inaano nila, kinokontrol din ng government. So kung sino yung nasa in control of the government, for example, Catholic is in control of the government, i-marginalize nila ang INC. Kami ang hawak ng communications, kami ang hawak ng mga welfare. O, para maprotektahan ng Iglesia ni Cristo yung nila, yung part nila, lalaban din sila sa government. Parang ganun na, ay lang.
Although uniquely with the Philippines is that there is no Catholic vote. So that is one thing that probably has been established already. That there is no Catholic vote.
Pero yung mga pare, no, Bradwin? Yung
Yeah.
mga pare, nagvo-voice sila na
Right.
against
right.
sila dito, against sila
Right.
dito.
So during the time of 1985, the snap election.
Correct.
So the bishops, the CBCP campaign for Korea.
Korean King.
Yes, Tim, Isayan.
Ay, Pastor. Bradwin, anong ginagawa ni Marcoleta? Hindi ko na kasi naano yun eh. Bakit? Inaano niya? Hinaharang niya?
So at the moment kasi, kaya medyo nag-aaway yung mga tao. Kasi yung mga diehard ni Marcoleta, syempre, whatever he does, it's perfect. Non-questionable, always legal. So ang kanya, gusto niya yung mga diskaya will become the state witness. So para daw makapagsalita, open to confess whatever they know. So ang objection naman ng mga ibang senador, sabi nila, may selective amnesia. Meaning na ang naalala niya lang from 2022 hanggang 2025. Yung ledger niya hanggang 2022 lang. Wala siyang before noon. But he became very rich and became very popular in getting projects starting 2016. So the time of Duterte. So why is he now like selecting only the time of Marcos and not the time of Duterte? That was the only question raised to him by the senators. Nagkakaroon siya ng selective amnesia. But yeah, so yun, and then nung ayaw indoors, ang ginawa niya, naging obstructionist siya. Alam niyo, sa government process, sa Congress, may mga dalawang tao dyan na pwedeng guluhin. In fact, tinrekin ni Tito Soto yun nung before he became the Senate President, na sabi niya, we can obstruct and we can do filibusterism. Filibusterism is, for example, you have to decide something, a bill, at the very close of the Congress. Okay? Say for example, 2 araw, magsasara na. Pero may hinahabol kayong yung bill na pa-aprobahan. Tapos ang gagawin nun, yung ayaw ma-approve yun, magkakaroon siya ng
Motion.
hindi motion, magkakaroon siya ng privilege speech. At ang gagawin niya, 2 araw na privilege speech yun. Ano yan? Lalagay pa ng yan. Hindi siya pwedeng pumunta ng kubeta. May kubeta siya sa harap niya. Habang nagsasalita, umihi dyan sa harap ng ang tawag doon, filibusterism. Para lang mapigil at hindi maprubahan.
Ma-technical.
So ganyan, those are things that happened in the past. And Marcoleta is what he's doing right now. So in-obstruct niya yung investigation, yung mga pangalan. So every time na yung pangalan linked to Duterte, tutigilin niya kaagad, pakakat niya kaagad. That was what he was doing when he was the chairman. But now that it is Ping, so ang ginawa niya, dahil hindi niya naman makontrol si Ping, he just obstructs. You spend so many times asking questions that are nonsense, that does not relate to anything. Anyway, so that is in the eyes of me. But in the eyes of others, idol nila, perfect 100%. Everything that Marcolita does is perfect. That's why they're now endorsing him to become the president or vice president. Ganun siya kagaling. Look at the person. You know, he was already in politics for like, what? 60. He has been a congressman for a while. Tingnan mo yung tao. He is always angry. He is always angry. He is always shouting. He is mad at the world. I don't know what is his problem.
Marcoleta is iglesia yata po yun.
Yes, he is Iglesia ni Cristo. Iglesia ni Cristo. But I mean is that he hates everyone. He hates everyone. He hates, I don't know, if I am a Christian, or could I be a Christian like that? I don't know. I cannot imagine me. So,
But
anyway,
di ba may transparency sa law ng Philippines? Dapat nagre-report yung mga ano.
okay, we have the freedom of information.
Uh-huh.
Naipasa na ba yun?
Tsaka
Wala.
yung
Wala.
anti-money laundering, hindi gumagana. Hindi
They're
gumagana.
doing the AMLAC is now doing that. But the transparency, supposedly the government is transparent. Okay, there was a time it was transparent. During the time of Aquino, the websites are very easy to go around. But now, just to get a single information, you cannot have it. Just even getting the budget, just a simple budget, supposedly these are public knowledge. The only budget that I can get is in 1990 and 2025. In between that, I don't know. So I have to ask ChatGPT to just gather whatever is not in the report and put it in the curve. So anyway, the thing is that the government, instead of transparency, is hiding everything. Of course, I hope that they will have the ICI on TV. During the time of Marcos, in 1983, when Benigno Aquino was shot dead at the tarmac, what happened was there was the investigation. This is called the Narvasa. No, that's what. Narvasa, I think, was replaced. It was, there was a commission, and the commission was on camera. So meaning that the investigation was all transparent. So everybody knew what are the evidence or what documents are being presented. And therefore, they can have their own conclusions. That's why by the